Hey everybody, welcome to a very special episode of the Groupchat Wrestling Podcast. We've got a fantastic episode lined up for you today. Joining us is James from For the Love of Wrestling, which is the largest wrestling convention in England. James is here to give us the lowdown on what's happening at this year's big event in Manchester, taking place in just under a month's time. You'll hear about all the special guests and the insider details that you don't want to miss. He also gives us a sneak peek into the For the Love of Horror and the brand new horror Rock and Wrestle Fest series, which look awesome. So grab a cup of tea, settle in, grab your championship belt, and get ready for an episode packed with excitement and plenty of wrestling love. Let's jump right in.
So thanks. I'm hoping that we had a nice segue in there from whoever has dropped us in here. And I am Wrestling Mark, and I am here with James from For the Love of Wrestling. So we've got a few things to ask. So start off, James, how you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Very, very well. Great to be on the show. Thank you very much for inviting us.
Oh, no, pleasure. Thank you very much for joining us. So to start with, for listeners who aren't familiar with you, what exactly is For the Love of Wrestling?
So, yeah, hopefully the majority of your audience is familiar with us. If not, hopefully we'll be by the end of this interview. But, yeah, we're For Love of Wrestling. We're Europe's largest wrestling convention. We are based in Manchester, and we're part of the larger Monopoly Events family. Many of you guys will know the conventions that go up and down all over the UK. Comic Con Liverpool, which is obviously one of the biggest ones in Europe now, which is probably our flagship one that we do twice a year. We've got shows up in the north of the UK in both Edinburgh and Aberdeen, and then we've obviously got down in Wales, Belfast, Midlands, London. We've got our sort of niche, more fantasy event, similar to the wrestling one. And obviously in Manchester base as well, we've got other shows such as For the Love of Horror, which is a huge show for the sci-fi, obviously For the Love of Wrestling as well. So let's just give you a sort of a bit more info on the umbrella group. But The Love of Wrestling itself started in 2019. It was on the back of Comic Con Liverpool, funnily enough. My boss Andy, who's the owner of Monopoly Events, he had a couple of wrestling guests on one of his Comic Cons. But I'm sure everyone's familiar with them by the name of Gail Kim and also Edge, or Cope as we're calling these days. But yeah, we had Edge and Cope. Sorry, Edge and Gail Kim on that particular show, and very quickly the demand for those particular guests, a light bulb went on above my boss's head to say, actually, there's something in this. We can, maybe this is the demand for these type of guests could warrant its own show. So that's just a little bit of background, who we are, where we started, and a little bit of information about the sort of the genesis of For Love of Wrestling itself.
So, I mean, the events are often, I think, my perception when I first heard of them, my best friend's last one up to the one in 2022, and he honestly just still to this day does not go on about it. He was genuinely excited when I told him this morning that I was doing this interview. Honestly, I could have said to him, I was interviewing MJF, and I don't think he would have been any more excited. So I think the events, like from my perception before, it was I suppose my perception when I first heard of it and didn't know much about it without delving into it. I think I thought it was mainly a meet and greet, simply that there to get autographs and meet people. And obviously, there's a lot more to these events with interviews and a lot of some great merchandise. Again, like some wrestling antique stuff to some extent. My friend actually went to his referring it, saying just how good that was. So, how would you summarize the experience on the whole for the weekend?
Yeah, and this is a really good way, sort of giving, hopefully painting a picture of how much it's grown since 2019. And if we go back to our 2019 show, yeah, it may have been a little bit like that, to be honest with you. But over the course of the last 6 years, we lost a couple of years, unfortunately, to COVID, as everybody did. But yeah, this will be our fifth event now, and it's completely evolved. It used to be sort of a 2-day sort of. I don't use the word standard, but that sort of event. And I go to wrestling conventions all over the world. I was back in the over in the Philly one for sort of going to a couple in Philadelphia last year. We're going to a couple in Vegas, and the next couple of months been over to Asia as well to some there. And yeah, I know what everybody means when someone says a wrestling convention and what idea they've got. The love of wrestling over the last 5 years evolved what probably I would more term as a wrestling festival. We used to be 2 days, we're now 3 days. We've got something pretty much going on at all times during those days. This year, for instance, we're kicking things off on the Friday night with the small matter of an evening with Ric Flair, which I'm sure, Ric Flair in a ring, surrounded by fans. Anybody's met Ric Flair knows that he doesn't pull any punches. That is one hell of a way to kick off our weekend this year. Then obviously after that we're going to have live wrestling from Progress Wrestling, who sort of some of their talent is some of the best in the UK right now. Saturday and Sunday we have the general convention convention events itself, and then into Saturday night we have our after party, which again is live wrestling from the Future Shock Wrestling, but we have some of our guests who are going to be wrestling on that show as well. So we have on that show, we have Breezango wrestling, we have Heath Slater wrestling, we have Team D'Lo Brown versus Team Sonny Ono and Tajiri, and then the main event. We also have our For Love of Wrestling Invitational Royal Rumble, and there's always surprises in there. And the person who wins that will then go on to face the Maharaja, formerly known as Jinder Mahal, to become the first ever For Love of Wrestling world champion. On top of that as well, we've got a cosplay competition entrance, which is great. We completely rebuild some wrestling stages. We've also got Lani Oki, for anybody who's familiar with Lana Austin in the UK. She presents an hour of a Lani Oki, which is going to be so much fun. But then in the day itself, as you say, so a lot of people do attend for autographs and pictures, but there's lots more going on. We have sort of Q&A panels with all of the guests that are there. We have prop builds, so we recreate some of the biggest and best moments in wrestling. This year, for example, we are rebuilding the Monday Night Nitro stage because we've got so many amazing WCW guests like Flair, like Sting, like Lex Luger, like Ron Simmons, like Muta, all of those type of people. We're also rebuilding Jake the Snake's Snake Pit. We're going to be doing the backstage interview area from Royal Rumble 92, WrestleMania 7 we're doing, the Slammy Awards we're doing. So, we've got that sort of that prop build aspect to it as well, where people can come and get the pictures taken. We invite some of the biggest collectors from all around Europe to come and do exhibits of their collections there. There's also going to be a gaming area there. There's a whole traders market there. So for any of you wrestling collectors can come down and just, imagine like a full-size market, but it's all wrestling stuff. It's amazing. There's so much more going on than sort of your standard convention, and this is why people literally come and just spend the whole weekend. For me, it's it's like a festival. It's like a Glastonbury of wrestling. It's probably the best way to term it.
I mean, yeah, Glastonbury is one of my favourite things in the world, so that definitely could entice me along. As you said, there is a really heavy WCW presence at the show this year. Is there any chance that you think any of those could potentially be seen in the Battle Royal? Could we be getting Sting's last match actually being here in the UK in mid-February rather than it being Revolution last year?
No. So I am happy to put to bed that there's no plans at the moment for that. It wouldn't surprise me. Excuse the pun. It wouldn't surprise me if we saw some surprises in the Battle Royal, as we sort of do every year. But no, we would do like to. We will not be seeing Sting or Ric Flair in those Battle Royals. Sting's with us on the Saturday. He is a very, very busy man. So Sting's coming in to do the Saturday for us, and then I think he's leaving Saturday evening. But to have people like Sting, for me, it's just so exciting to have Sting, Ric Flair, Lex Luger, and Ron Simmons all in one photo op. So for me, probably the four pillars of that classic early 90s WCW. He's absolutely insane. We've got the Nation of Domination reunion with Godfather D'Lo, Ron Simmons, and Mark Henry. We've got the APA reunion with JPL and Ron Simmons as well. Two-man band reunion with Heath and Jinder, and obviously then the Breezango reunion as well. So we've got a lot of reunions going on this year. Then there's all the photo opposite. We've got the Japanese photo as well with Muta and Tajiri and Sonny Ono, and then sort of duos as well with people like Sting and Ric Flair. I mean, some of the photo opportunities are just insane this year. We've never had as many sort of very cool duos, trios, group photos as ever on the show before. So we're very excited. We've got both the Godfather and Papa Shango appearing as well. Now, they aren't friends. They do not get on, and they refuse to be in the same room. So apologies, we can't do a duo with those guys. So we have the Godfather appearing on Saturday, and then Papa Shango appearing on Sunday, both in gimmick. The Mountie's going to be appearing in gimmick as well. Bradshaw's appearing in gimmick. Sabu's appearing in gimmick. Mike Chioda is going to be doing a photo in the ring with your arm raised, with a title belt, announcing you as WWF champion. We're doing that in gimmick. We know that will work. We did it a few years ago with Earl Hebner, and it was one of the best-selling photos over the entire weekend. So yeah, again, this is what I mean. Where you go to, and this isn't slating. With the wrestling conventions, what they do, they clearly do well. A lot of them are very well established and been going for a long, long time. We are huge wrestling fans ourselves, as we were talking about, I think, before we started recording. And it's almost selfishly to a point. We go, do you know what would be really cool? Let's just have the Godfather in gimmick and the Papa Shango in gimmick. Let's do that photo with Mike Chioda, but let's do it in the ring. So a lot of what we put on, we put on because we think, do you know what, as a wrestling fan, we'd really, really like that. And I think that's probably it's sometimes what separates us from other events. And again, it's no. That's not something to throw shade on any of those other events. I think it just says why we do things in the way that we do it.
I mean, as you said there, like when I first saw everyone that's going to be there, like this is the main event scene at this show. You've got the peak WCW main event scene coming which again is incredible. This is a pretty special convention by those standards. So when you look, I think there must be so many moving parts because there's so many big names and it's such a long list. There's not just 8 or 9 people turning out. There's dozens of people at this event. Like, there's so many moving parts. How easy is it to get this all into place?
Well, again, I think we're near 30 guests this year, which is the most we've ever done. We've given so many names. We've not even given you all the big names there. We've not. I don't think we've mentioned Mick Foley.
No.
We've not mentioned Mark Henry. We've not mentioned Jake the Snake Roberts. We've not mentioned Deborah McMichael and Jacqueline. Absolute. Everybody had a photo of either Deborah or Jacqueline on the bedroom wall during that 90s Attitude Era period. Ash by Elegance, formerly known as Dana Brooke. Shane Douglas, ECW legend and former world champion. Buff Bagwell, Sean Mooney. All these people are going to be appearing at the event. There is so many moving parts, and that's why over the course of the last 5 shows we've been able to evolve it. Hopefully, we're in a good fluid routine with it now. Obviously, Monopoly events put on sort of 16 to 18 of the biggest conventions across the UK and beyond every single year. So we are very experienced on doing this. But yeah, it's absolutely insane. From probably, already now it's starting to really, really gather steam. But I would probably say around a week before, that's when the chaos sets in, and things will absolutely go wrong. They always do. It's like flights will be cancelled, things like that, and we will start fighting those fires to make sure we get everything over the line that we need to get over the line. So yeah, for that week before and probably into the Tuesday, Wednesday afterwards, it's complete and utter chaos, but it's so much fun, and when you see the response of the people who attend, it is so worth doing.
So this will be the 3rd year in a row in Manchester, won't it?
Yes.
23, 24, 25. So what was just this will be the last question before we actually get stuck into some actually wrestling talk. What was behind the move from Liverpool to Manchester back then? And do you see yourself staying there for like the foreseeable, or do you envision moving out to maybe a Birmingham or a London in the future?
Yeah, never say never. There's, we have in the past discussed doing another full of a wrestling one, whether that be further down south, whether that be further afar in Europe. Obviously we know that the UK is probably Europe's biggest wrestling market, but followed closely behind it in places like Germany and Italy. We've done shows in Germany before. We did a show with Undertaker and Kane over in Dusseldorf. There's never say never. Is there going to be another full of a wrestling and where that could be? The reason why we moved across from Liverpool, and anybody who's been to the Liverpool show can account for this. It is an amazing modern space, but the space that we used for the first couple of Full of Wrestlings, it was one big massive exhibition hall, and as amazing as it was, it does kind of limit you a little bit on what you can do. Because wrestlers aren't quiet. Wrestling panels aren't quiet, wrestling fans aren't quiet, wrestling matches aren't quiet, and you can only have so much noise going on at one time. Whereas at the BEC Manchester, it's also there's different parts of the building that are set apart. So you can have a very, very noisy, vibrant traders area going on perhaps the left hand side of the building, while perhaps you've got live wrestling going on in one of the halls. Then you can have panels on the other side of the hall going live as well. So the way that Boulders is set out, the Boulders Exhibition Centre, it just allows us to do a lot more at the same time. So yeah, it's and to be honest with you, it's got a better vibe for a wrestling convention as well. It's a bit more. It's a bit more. I don't know the best way to describe it. It's your old school sort of probably a wrestling arena sort of vibe to it. So yeah, it's for me personally. I think it's set out a lot better and allows us to do much more stuff all happening at the same time.
Nice. So I think 2022 MJF was over, if I'm not right. And from the reports I heard, he really stole the show with his interview on stage. Apparently, a lot of people seem to be talking about it. He never broke character, was just on great form the whole time. Is there anyone else that, for you personally, stood out that you've had at the event?
Yeah, I mean, MJF was. The good thing is when you get some of these guys over, the great thing with wrestlers, I mean, what's the best way to describe it? So when you get Elijah Wood over, everybody wants him to be Frodo.
Yeah.
I hope he's called Frodo. I'm not embarrassing myself. I'm hoping he was the one that played Frodo.
No, you're right.
Yeah. So he's that's what people are hoping for, and as lovely as they are, sometimes people are, oh well, I wasn't expecting him to be like this. I wasn't expecting him to be like this. With wrestlers, normally the very, very successful ones, there's a lot of their actual personality that goes into these gimmicks, which is why they're so natural, why they connect so well, and why they come across so well with the audience. So yeah, MJF is an amazing guy. I got to spend a little bit of time with him.
Wow.
Yeah, he's a very cool guy, a very nice guy. He was obviously I'm sort of the logistics manager for these events, so I have a bit more communication with the guest than others, and he was vaguely polite on arrival, and we did have to have a quick chat about how things were going to work through the day, and he was very professional. I'll give him that, but he did also warn me that when I was going to meet him to go out onto the floor, I would definitely be meeting MJF. So and again, I apologise for the language, but I'd a really nice chat, or a vaguely nice chat with him now before he went up, got himself sorted, did what he needed to do, and then I met him a couple of hours later, waited for him at the bottom of the lift. The lift opened. I went to shake his hand, and he said, "What the fuck do you want?" And I was like, "Okay." So that's like, okay. So it's like, so we're getting MJF today, are we? And he was rude. He throughout the day he was obscene at times. He was insulting. He was obnoxious. He was absolutely everything you would hope MJF would be if you met MJF. And he couldn't have been a better guest. So that there was points in the day that I was sort of around his general area and thinking, we're going to get a complaint about this. We're going to get with this. You sort of know some wrestling fans go up and they almost, poke the bear because they want that response. Some other wrestling fans, I think, maybe they weren't that much aware of his gimmick, or maybe they'd seen him before. And he was, just plain and simply unpleasant at times, which 95% of the fans responded really well to. Other fans were, I think, a bit shocked, especially people who'd come with.
Wow.
Yeah, and he's an equal opportunist offender. Is probably the best way to describe him. If you are a 40-year-old hairy backside Mancunian like myself, and then if you're a young lad or a young girl who's there with their parents, he will treat you the same.
Wow.
So that obviously sort of, I was just stood around sometimes going, oh my God, this is going crazy. And anybody who was there will tell you about the legendary MJF panel, which wasn't, we knew nothing about. It wasn't planned, it wasn't staged, it wasn't meant to be happening. Basically what happened is MJF went across the floor to do some professional photos. As he was walking back across to where his desk was, he noticed that the wrestling ring was empty. So he just told one of the guys on the sound desk to give him a mic, and he was off, and that was it. And then he was in the ring, and he was there for about 20 minutes. And I don't think there was a person in the audience who he didn't personally insult or offend at any point, which is good. So MJF was MJF, all guns blazing, and he was amazing. But we get lots of guests who are brilliant. I mean, it depends what you're looking for from any particular guest. I mean, if I take the New Age Outlaws, for instance, again, they are. We had Billy and obviously Road Dogg, and they are like a pair of naughty boys. They are they're constantly up to mischief, constantly sort of trying to get a laugh out of each other. It's like they're on a stag do or something, but they're having a great time in each other's company, and that was good really nice to see. Other ones who really impressed me, Trish Stratus is always an absolute darling, as is Lita. We've had them on a number of our shows, and they're always an absolute pleasure. We had on the same show as them the first time we had Mickey James, we had Candice Michelle, we had Tori Wilson, we had Alundra Blaze, and we had, so it was very much there was a real big sort of theme, so especially, so I don't want to call them divas, but a lot of them were from that period, but there was a lot of girl power going on, and it was very funny to sort of sit in a room with them all at the end of the day and sort of see who was boss and see who the matriarch was, and sort of and I think sort of inside of wrestling, Trish Stratus is seen almost as we see her as outsiders. Very much sort of like Trish was the mother hen of that particular group, which was lovely to see. But all the way through to last year, 2023 show, when we had the Dudley Boys on that particular show. Bubba Ray's an amazing guy, and I think Bubba Ray personally, he gets a bit of a bad rap sometimes for. He's had a bit of a weird reputation with fans and stuff like that, but he couldn't have been nicer. He's very direct, he's very dry, and until you sort of maybe spent half an hour in his company, you sort of can't get his sense of humour. But his knowledge for the business is absolutely second to none, and that's, to me, that's become more prevalent over perhaps the last 12 to 18 months for anybody who's been listening to his podcast. But Bully Ray has got an encyclopedic knowledge of wrestling, very, very, very well respected by his peers, and he's a very, very nice guy, and unquestionably one of the most professional people I've ever worked with. If you told him that you needed him to meet him somewhere at 15:15, he'd be there at 10:00 and ready to go. And he was always very, very when I say business-like, he was always right. Okay, we've done that. What should we do next? What should we do next to make this a success? Bully Ray was just one of those people that I met who was sort of, you'd heard things, and this is what I always say to wrestling fans: say, come to our events, meet the person yourself, and make your own decision. Don't have an opinion on someone based on what's written on a dirt sheet on the internet, which is purposely written to get a reaction. So we've had some amazing one. We did the first one obviously with the Undertaker back in 2019. We had the Outsiders on that show with Eric Bischoff. We had Jericho on that show, Kelly, people like that. Christian on that show. So we've had some amazing, incredible guests over the years. This one as well, I think this one's particularly special, as you say, with that huge presence of sort of Rick, Sting, Lex, Ron, Muta, and these really absolute icons of WCW.
I suppose with in reference to Bubba Ray there, there's an element of not being a victim of his own success as such, but in the way that MJF is, he doesn't really tend to break character much. He's always playing probably the extended version of himself. And again, he's spent the majority of his career being a heel. So I suppose if people that don't like him, he is actually doing a very good job, because that's been his job. And it fascinates me what you say about MJF in terms of I always wonder, does he switch on and switch off? Is this really him? Is this an extended version of himself? And so to hear that the little tidbits of him there, the way he just kind of goes into this character and he doesn't break it for such prolonged periods is quite the achievement, to be honest. So are there any guests that you've not had on that you would love to get? Any wrestler in the world?
Oh God, yeah. I mean, there's people we would love to have on this show. I mean, obviously the two names, there's probably the three names that come firstly to mind, and they're all obviously very, very busy people who don't do much as it is these days. I mean, obviously we had John Cena on our wrestling. Our Comic Con Wales show. We had John Cena on there a couple of years ago. We'd love to have him on the show. Austin, obviously, we'd love to have on the show. Hulk Hogan, I think would be an amazing person to have on the show. But we've pretty much been in contact with. We get messages daily going, "Oh, have you thought of this person? Have you thought of this person? Have you ever spoke to Sandman?" Those sorts of questions. If a person is alive and if a person is popular with wrestling fans, we've contacted them or we have been in touch with them. When we're already, we're what 3 or 4 weeks out from. Well, it's a month today. Literally a month today. We open our doors on the Friday for the Ric Flair show. We've already started planning for the year after. There's loads of people we would like to have as guests. I'm just trying to think of who, for me personally. I mean, getting Jake the Snake Jake the Snake's probably from year one the person that I've really wanted on this show. Again, Just going back to what you said about Bully Ray and MJF, Jake, and similar to Taker as well. That is one of those gimmicks, personas, whatever you want to call it, that has been so successful because of how personally, having met him a couple of times, how close that is to the real person, how much of himself he puts into it, which is why it connects so well. So Jake Roberts is definitely someone we would like to have on this one. Stacey Keibler is a name that we were discussing. Stacey Keibler. I think after she went to the Hall of Fame, she would be someone, I think, perhaps from sort of the Attitude Era, which we would love to have on the show at some point. Hardy Boys would be someone who we're always trying to work with the Hardy Boys to get a date that'd work for them. Obviously, our dream for a show in the future, whenever that could possibly be, would be to have the Hardys, the Dudleys, and Edge and Cope or Christian, whatever he's going. Sorry, Cope and Christian on the show. So if we could ever do that sort of TLC reunion, that would be probably. I think if we could do a TLC reunion, that'd be a real sort of bucket list moment in our sort of event.
So in terms of like for Cope and Christian, obviously being with AEW now, are certain companies easier to work with in terms of getting them over? Because I can imagine that WWE is not easy to access their talent, whereas with AEW, I suppose there's probably a bit more of an in maybe.
I think what it is with WWE, and we actually had our own exclusive WWE show going back to, I want to say 2019, might have been 20. We actually had our WWE convention, which we hosted in Manchester, and we had some amazing names on there: Seth Rollins, Becky Lynch, Sasha Banks, Bray Wyatt, Adam Cole, AJ Styles, the Good Brothers, people like that. We had on that event. So we've got a great relationship, and that's how we ended up doing like the shows in Germany with Taker. We've got a great relationship with WWE. We stay in constant contact with them, but their guys are just so busy. They never stop. So that makes it a little bit more difficult. AEW guys and the way their contracts work a little bit, and the fact that their schedules are, I would probably say, much less than what the WWE guys are. They are a little bit more. They're a little bit easy to get. Obviously, a couple of years ago, we had Britt Baker, Adam Cole. Obviously, we've had MJF on the show. People like that. Jungle Boy we had on the show, Anna Jay we had on the show, some other people we had as well. So yeah, I think their schedule makes it a little bit easy to get over to shows like ours. But again, we've got great relationships with AEW as well. We'd like to, we didn't have. We've got obviously Jake and Sting. Now they are both, been AEW, but whether people would class them as AEW guys, I don't imagine they would. I think, Jake for most people will be always be a golden era legend. Sting will almost be the face of WCW. Obviously, Sting's done some great stuff in AEW. But we'd like to get some more of the contemporary AEW guys back again. Our shows. We've got this show, and we've also got another show coming up next month, which is our horror rock and wrestling show. Obviously, the Full of Horror is so successful, the Full of Wrestling is so successful, but there is a bit of a crossover with the fan bases. So we said, why don't we see what sort of a bit of a hybrid of those conventions would look like. So we're doing a horror, rock, and wrestling show. In March, we've already announced people like David Arquette and Chris Jericho and Tyler Bane for that show. So I mean, it's obviously easier to deal with the guys who aren't on the road week in, week out. So I mean, you know, the guys who are a bit more retired. So perhaps a Bradshaw or a Lex Luger or a Deborah or a, you know, the guys who aren't on TV every single week for AEW, WWE. They're the easy ones to get to. But no, we've got a great relationship with all the promotions out there. We'd really like for that to continue as well.
Nice, and I'll wrap it off by let's have a little chat about wrestling. So, just so we can get an idea of what you like in wrestling. What's working for you in the industry right now?
What's working for me in the industry right now? So I love this time of year. I mean, my go-to, my comfort blanket, whatever you want to call it, is the golden era. I've just started. You know, I've always had the WWE network, but obviously now things have moved across to Netflix. I don't know. It's strange. Even though I've always had the WWE network, now it's on Netflix. It just seems a little bit more accessible.
I couldn't agree more. I've watched. I mean, I've had the network. I probably had it like dormant for 6 months of the year a lot of the time, and now it's just there on Netflix. One button, and I'm straight in. Like I went back and watched all the Saturday night main events quite recently from the 80s because it's just that feel. I'm that age as well. I'm 39, so I'm that age. So it's great having that, watching that stuff.
I think that's it. I think it's a case of, you know, if I wanted to watch wrestling, I would have to go onto the WWE app with a mindset of let's watch wrestling. Whereas now I log onto Netflix, it'll be shall I watch Cobra Kai? Shall I watch Peep Show? Oh no, hang on, let's watch a bit of wrestling. So yeah, I think it does just seem a little bit more accessible. So it's funny enough, just you said that. Yeah, I'm working my way back through the SummerSlams at the moment. I've just got through. Funny enough, earlier today, I've just watched SummerSlam 90 for me, which is still to this day the best pay-per-view of all time. I absolutely love that pay-per-view.
The music of it. I mean, I was a big Warrior guy as well. The music back then as well. It felt great back then. Like again, probably the second cage match that I had on pay-per-view was good times. It always does feel. I like watching the old Survivor series. I really get into. I put them on and don't really pay attention to it, but it's nice watching a 10-man tag from '88 with the Conquistadors on one team and the British Bulldogs on the other.
Exactly, it's exactly that, and you know there was. I mean, if there's one person who would always deserve to go into the Hall of Fame, it's Jim Johnson because the amount of amazing he made. You know, if you look at like a Demolition or a Heart Foundation, the music that he created for those guys was. The music he created for those guys was just, and it became such a part of the gimmicks. For me, just that I watched that SummerSlam 90 today. Obviously, spoilers, apologies for this, but you know, I remember Texas Tornado beating Mr. Perfect for the Intercontinental title. That was one of those first, you know, jumping on my couch sort of moments, going, oh my god! Obviously, the Heart Foundation versus Demolition with the sort of the.
Is that 2 out of 3 falls, that one?
Yeah, where Legion of Doom show up, and for me, it's just incredibly good storytelling. So yeah, I always go back to the Golden Era stuff just because I think the characters were louder. I'm sure somewhere deep inside my brain, it's about reminiscing and thinking about, you know, happier times when I was younger, faster, and probably slimmer. And you know, so it's that as well. But I just thought the characters were larger than life to me then. You know, your Hulk Hogan's, your Ultimate Warriors, your Savages, they were like real life superheroes. Back then, and probably that's probably what's going on in my brain with sort of releasing endorphins and stuff when I watch the older stuff. I like the modern stuff. I do go across for WrestleMania every year, which I really enjoy.
Oh, wow.
If I think about what do I think is working really well in wrestling at the moment, I think the storytelling with the you know, Roman and The Rock and the, you know, will they, won't they, and where's that going? Are we finally going to see that come to fruition at WrestleMania this year? Here's hoping we do. Although there's rumours saying that, you know, The Rock can't make it now, but I'm hoping that's just a bit of a red herring. If that comes out, I think, you know, that's the build to that has been absolutely incredible. You know, fair play. I know. I mean, if you go back maybe 2-3 years, I mean, people just weren't getting behind Roman, and then he sort of came back as the tribal chief and seemed to just gather this momentum. And I think the way Roman's developed over the last few years has been incredible. Cody Rhodes, I'm a huge fan of Cody Rhodes. I was in the building when he returned against Seth Rollins, and that was one of the loudest pops I've ever heard in wrestling. And I was obviously in Philly earlier this year when he finally got the title. So yeah, I've loved the story of Cody Rhodes. I think that's gone really well. Roman Reigns as well. Yeah, gone really, really well. So yeah, I think wrestling's probably in the best. I think especially with it now moving to Netflix. I don't know from a WWE point of view in the UK. I'm sure and whether what they thought moving to BT Sport or whatever it was at the time, I'm sure they got paid lots of money for that. But if I look at
For exposure, it wasn't good.
yeah, it wasn't because I think I think the majority of people who are sports fans might have Sky Sports, but not that many people. So bother with nowhere near as many people I would imagine bother with BT Sports. So it made it took a lot of it away, which was obviously probably helped other companies. But no, I think wrestling's in a good place. I think it being on Netflix now, most people have a Netflix account. I think it's only going to go from strength to strength. I think more events in the UK. I think the AEW. I was at AEW All In Wembley the first year. That was just absolutely insane. I was in Berlin last year for WWE's Bash in Berlin. That again was just incredible fun. So bringing more big shows over here is going to help. And they are doing that. We're going to see. Obviously not over here, but the first Royal Rumble outside of North America in next year. That for me signifies that they are now happy moving those. So it wouldn't surprise me if it was an announcement sooner rather than later of the UK getting a similar show. I think some of the shows they've done with Money in the Bank and Clash at the Castle, I think they've been testers, and I think they've been very, very successful. I think they need to work on the ticket prices. Some of the ticket prices have been absolutely outrageous. But it is what it is. I'm sure they know their market. But I think soon wrestling's in a great place, and it's a great time to be a wrestling fan of any age.
I couldn't agree more. It feels like from again, social media can definitely take things away because everyone seems to be hypercritical on there. But when you take a step back and look at it, wrestling's in a great place at the moment. AEW has got a huge deal. WWE have maintained like a third year of like white hot ticket sales, and again the British scene as well. I think like with RevPro, with Progress, it feels like wrestling has like recovered from a bit of a lull for a decade or so. So it's promising. It's good times ahead, hopefully.
I think so, and I think we know what you got to look at as well. As I saw last week that I logged onto Netflix and I saw that WWE was at #1, and it had beaten Squid Game, it had beaten Cobra Kai, it had beaten The Crown or Bridgerton or whatever the other big shows on there are called, and it had beaten all them, and it was #1 on Netflix. So that to me. Anybody who's critical of WWE either taking that deal or perhaps follows other promotions, and I don't buy into that tribalism at all. For me, it's very strange behaviour. You wouldn't sort of go down the road and if you're wearing Nike trainers, you wouldn't go down the road and have a go at someone wearing Adidas, would you? And that's
or if someone watches Coronation Street and you watch EastEnders, you're not going to lose your mind.
Yeah, exactly. It's not. It's. Sure, we're all guilty of it with football sometimes and things like that, but wrestling isn't different. Wrestling's entertainment. Yeah. But what for me, why it's so good is so WWE's on Netflix now and it's doing huge record-breaking numbers. So straight away, Amazon Prime's going to be looking at that, and Disney Plus is going to be looking at that, and Hulu and any other sort of streaming services within the UK and Apple TV. They're going to be going, I fancy a bite of that pie. So then you're going to have Amazon Prime perhaps talking to AEW. You might have Apple TV talking to TNA Impact. Everybody's from WWE. The more successful WWE is on Netflix and globally, the more everybody wins. And I think sometimes as wrestling fans, we fail to sort of see that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Well, James, it's been absolutely brilliant having you on. I'll just give you another quick plug for anyone listening who's thinking the event is in mid-February. For more information, fortheloveofwrestling.co.uk. And for tickets, you can go to ticketquarter.co.uk, and early bird tickets start on there from £20, I believe.
Yeah, so you've got, so this is a great thing. So you've got concession. There's actually, if you've got a child who is 4 or under, they can come to the event completely free. Child's from 5 till 9, they can come in there for a concession ticket. But then we do have other tickets as well. But yes, do come to the event. And if you're looking for more information, as I say, the website itself is www.fortheloveofwrestling.co.uk. But if you just jump onto the Facebook page, you'll find it very easily. Search for For the Love of Wrestling. It's got over 100,000 followers, so you'll find it very, very quickly, and all the information on there, all the announcements we're making as we move closer to the show. So we have more announcements about matches for the live wrestling, we have more prop build announcements to come, we're going to be releasing schedules for the photos and the autos and all that type of wonderful stuff. So just jump onto the Facebook page and have a nose, and if there's any information you can't find, just message the page and I'll be more than happy to sort of answer any of your questions. But no, please, even whether it's you want to come down to the Ric Flair thing on the Saturday, come just to the after party and watch some live wrestling on the Saturday night, or come to the event itself and just sit there, buy an entry ticket, and then just sit there watching all the free panels all day, and go and get yourself a picture on the Nitro stage. There is so much to do. It's like a theme park for wrestling fans. You'll have the time of your life.
Amazing. Oh, James, thank you so much for taking time out to talk to us this evening, and good luck in February. I hope the event goes as well as it deserves to.
Wonderful, guys. Been a real pleasure speaking with you.
Brilliant. Have a great evening, and take care.
Cheers now. Bye.